Ron, your last name again? Seven, right. And Ron is here from Paul Smith. I'm sorry. Ron is here from Choice Lighting and Electric, is that correct?
Plug-in stations. Paul
Plug-in
is from
stations.
Choice Lighting.
Gotcha.
Not here.
All right. And you're going to do a presentation and we'll have a discussion about installing an electric car charging system at the town hall campus here.
Yep.
So,
All right, well, Tom, thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. I'll do my best to keep it brief and just so that we can leave some time for Q&A. Again, my name is Ron Semp. I'm with Plug-in Stations. Our company is headquartered in the Albany area, but we do work all over upstate and downstate New York and across the Northeast. We've been installing electric vehicle charging infrastructure and equipment since 2011. I've heard somebody say they've been installing charging stations since before it was cool. So I like that. So we've been doing it for a while. We've installed well over 1,000 charging ports in across New York. So that's a little bit about our company. What I'd like to do tonight is basically make the case for why municipalities like Webster ought to install charging stations in their towns and villages. First, I'd like to try to make the case that electric vehicles are here to stay. They've gone mainstream. It's not a little niche group of drivers anymore. If you pay attention to any of the car ads on TV, you'll see probably close to half the ads you see on TV are for electric vehicles. To make the point, Chevy is moving their entire lineup of light and medium duty vehicles to all electric within the next 10 to 12 years. Ford is following suit, and a lot of the European car manufacturers have even a more aggressive timeline than that. So we're going to continue to see deployment of electric vehicles across all segments, all types, all shapes and sizes of vehicles. So the idea here is to get ahead of that and get some stations in the ground now, while there's a significant amount of rebate and subsidy support from various program sponsors. So, reason why should a municipality install electric vehicle charging stations? There's a couple of reasons. Primarily to provide a resource for your residents and visitors, to attract them to the town park or in municipal buildings. In this case, in some cases, to attract EV drivers to downtown and village areas, to local businesses and restaurants. The typical EV driver right now earns twice the income of other vehicle owners. So they'll spend money, they have money, and they will come to your municipality and spend money in the local businesses. In addition, there's certainly environmental benefits to encouraging EV adoption. So if you install charging resources in your town, you're encouraging the residents to buy an electric vehicle, and it can coincide with any sustainability or climate goals that you might have in your town. The other big reasons to do this and do it now is, like I mentioned before, is there's a lot of free money out there from state government and utilities to to pay for the stations. I just want to highlight a project quickly that we did. It's not really similar to Webster. It's more of a tourist destination, but we just finished a project that I'm really proud of in Lake Placid. Basically what they did, they installed it, as opposed to installing a station in a municipal building lot like this. They installed it in a public parking area, which was really great for them. They saw usage right away, and they're generating a little bit of revenue from the stations to pay for those spots that they took up with the stations. They were able to collect about $16,000 in grants from NYSERDA, and we helped them plug-in stations help them from top to bottom with the install of the stations. So the big, sort of the big motivating factor, I guess, right now is, like I mentioned before, is all the incentives that you can get to install electric vehicle charging stations. So the first being RG&E is paying for 90% of any of the electrical infrastructure that needs to go into the ground in order to bring power to the charging sites. That can be thousands and thousands of dollars that you will get from RG&E. On top of that, which is really unique, it's not very often that you'll find utility incentives and NYSERDA incentives have the ability to be stacked on top of each other. So right now, you can get the electrical infrastructure paid for by RG&E and the station hardware paid for by NYSERDA. So there's very little out of pocket for the town. There are some ongoing operating costs aside from the electricity that you dispense. There's some network fees and things like that, but that's relatively minimal. There's also NYSERDA, other NYSERDA programs out there for other types of high speed charging. And then obviously it's not applicable here, but if there are businesses that are looking to install chargers, there's federal and state tax credits as well. So that said, told you I'd keep it really high level, and I'm hoping that there's questions. If not, I can sort of get into some more details, but does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask now? If not, I can kind of talk about some other things.
What's the total installation cost?
So your total install cost, it averages around $5,000 per charging port for the electrical work. And you can figure your charging station hardware is around $7,000, but that can vary depending on the manufacturer.
Do you know that we already have one at our recreation center?
I do not. Do you know which type of station it is?
I do not, but also I believe there are two in the village municipal parking lot behind Village Hall.
Right.
Okay. As I drove in here, I see this as a great opportunity, this parking area. Just today with all of the people at the playground, and I imagine when Little League gets going, there'll be a lot of people here. I think this would be a great spot, not only to serve anybody coming in to visit the municipal buildings, but I think it would get more use from people visiting the park and the baseball fields.
How long does the usual charge take?
So with the level 2 charging, you get about 25 miles of range for every hour that the car is plugged in.
Because when we put the one at the recreation center, our thoughts of putting it here was that people don't generally spend that much time in town hall. I do see your point about the playgrounds, and certainly think that that's valid. How do most municipalities handle the cost of the actual charge? Are they giving it away?
That's shifting. When I first started doing this, most municipalities were giving it away for free as a benefit to their residents and visitors. They're slowly shifting towards a pay-for-use model where they want to cover their cost of electricity plus the cost of their annual network fees. So I would say half the municipalities I've been working with recently have decided to charge for the use of the stations.
Yeah, I think it's going to have to come to that at some point.
And quite frankly, electric vehicle drivers expect to pay. Mm-hmm. They're not. I mean, the free charging is a bonus, but it's not a deterrent. Having to pay for use of the station as long as the price is reasonable, and has parity with fuel. It's not going to deter the driver from plugging in.
And I think the non-EV drivers don't want to pay for the charge for the EV drivers in their taxes. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we find that in workplace settings too, where it has caused workplace issues where if the employer gives EV drivers free charging, other employees want them to pay for their gasoline. So I would encourage anybody who installs a station to charge for charging unless there's a use case that really it's not appropriate. But at this point, for municipal parking area, I generally say the rule of thumb is whatever your kilowatt hour charges from your utility, double that, and that generally covers your costs.
Bill, what were you gonna ask?
Patty,
Or
yes.
did Patty cover it, did you?
And we did receive rebate money
Yeah,
for that,
it's funny, the only, and I
of
knew,
$8,000.
just coincidentally,
Yeah.
I didn't know this when we booked you, honestly. Glenn and Chris from the Parks and Rec Department were gonna be here, so my question was, do you have any idea how many people utilize the one over there?
It gets used pretty fairly, regular. Last night, actually, when I left, there was a car that was sitting on there, and I noticed it probably a good half hour, 45 minutes before I left.
And do you know, are we giving it away right now?
It's through, I think it's EV Connect, I think is the label that's on the actual charger.
Do you know if the person who was using it was using our facilities? Or were they just sitting in their car?
There was nobody in it. There were two people that were out. Looked like it was a family, a mother and a husband, and a mother and a father. There were two kids playing in the field.
Okay.
So my guess is they were there. They weren't physically inside. If I had to guess, it would have been them. But I've seen a lot of people pull in, get out with their dog, go for a walk, put
Yeah.
the car in the charger, and
Well, and not for nothing, and we had to put something on the agenda to post, and we said the town hall campus here, installation here. Off the top of my head, I don't know if really that's the appropriate place to put it if we end up going forward with that. Parks, I can understand people going to a park and they're gonna spend an hour or two at the park, like the playgrounds you said here and stuff, so I guess I never thought about the Ridge Field and stuff. But, yeah,
Something to
Interesting.
consider is so when you're considering EV charging, you should be looking into the future. And I'm already seeing several municipalities moving some of their fleet to electric to save operating costs, fuel, and maintenance. Whether you're ready for that now or not, I don't know. But looking in the crystal ball, the town of Webster will be moving that direction for your smaller vehicles, whether it's 5 years, 7 years down the road.
Yeah.
It's going to make sense financially to do that. So I would encourage you to consider putting some level of equipment here. If RG&E is paying for it, if NYSERDA is paying for it, I would encourage you to do it now rather than 5 years down the road when nobody's going to be paying for it except for your taxpayers.
There's definitely merit, and I guess I have one other, I'll admit my ignorance, I don't have an electric car, so if you own an electric car, do you have something permanent usually in your garage that you're charging that thing?
Typically, yes. The model here is charge at home overnight and then top off throughout the day. So you go to work or you go shopping, go take your kids to the Little League game.
Right.
You're really just topping off. So when I mentioned you get 25 miles of range for every hour that you're plugged in, if somebody drives into Rochester and back from work and comes to the game, they're topping off in an hour and a half and they're full again before they move on to their next
Okay, and that's because obviously, when you say it's 25 miles for each hour that they charge, you almost worry about a loitering type of thing, you know what I mean? Like,
You can create pricing policies that will encourage turnover, and you can charge a certain rate for the first hour or the first 2 hours that the individual is charging, and then you can ratchet that rate up as time goes on if you want that parking space to flip and be used. So there's a lot of flexibility with your pricing policies.
the only last question I have, and it's probably impossible for you to answer.
I'll take a
How
stab
about
at it.
that for a preface, huh? At least in our lifetimes, we've watched, gas stations the only major change I can think to gas stations and what we put in the ground when they come and put it in, is that they used to have leaded gas, they don't anymore, right? I mean, they used to have leaded, and well, so the obsolescence over the last 50 years of gas, I mean, they've come up with different types of fuel and whatever, but I get it. We go and let's say we put in 15 of these things at our town facilities, parks and this and that, and then as the industry starts to move forward, and I agree with you, it probably will be electric cars by 2030. What happens if this station doesn't match anymore what they need to do?
Right, so
Charge the cars that they're putting out in 2027.
the stations themselves, the hardware inside of of the stations are pretty basic. The plug configuration, there was several years ago, there was sort of the Betamax versus VHS situation, and that's starting to we're starting to coalesce around one configuration. Any level 2 charger that we put in for you would be compatible with any vehicle currently, and I don't see a reason that the manufacturers would move away from that. There doesn't seem to be any reason to. And any other upgrades that the station would need could be handled through the software. So all of the stations are connected through a cell signal to the cloud, and any updates, just like your phone, would be handled through the network.
And that's that network fees you described earlier?
Yes.
Okay.
I have one more question. You mentioned level 2. Were you talking about a level 2 charger?
Yeah, I didn't want to get into it for time's sake, but there's 3 different types of charging. There's level 1 charging, which you basically plugged into an outlet on the wall. Mm-hmm. Level 2 charging, which is probably the most appropriate for a municipal situation like this, where you get the 25 miles of range for every hour. And then there's DC fast charging, and that's sort of an emergency fast charging along highways and things like that. So that's to address the range anxiety that we hear about with electric vehicles that will essentially charge a vehicle in a half an hour, 45 minutes from zero. But that's not necessary in a suburban environment like this.
Interestingly, this was a topic of conversation at the Conservation Board Monday night.
Come on.
Yeah, we were talking about electric cars and charging, and come the day when everything is an electric vehicle, where's all the electricity going to come from?
Thank you.
That's a challenge that the utilities are working through. There's a whole lot of excess capacity on those non-peak hours, so really they just need to manage those times in August when electricity is at its peak, and we're working through that. And utilities, it's on their radar, and they're coming up with solutions.
They'll have to.
Hey, Bill, you're sure that Patty asked all the questions you had?
Yes, you did.
Really?
Yeah.
And Ron, I got good news for you. You got our attention because we are at 18 minutes. We don't slam down the curtain and give you the hook at 15 if there's robust questions and conversation going on. So we'll follow up.
Great.
And I will tell you this, I'd love, and I take it we don't have this data of how many cars come to the one that we have. The one in the village we don't have any control over, so I don't know if the village has any. Those are municipal ones, it's not a private business that has them there?
I think there's a couple there.
Yeah.
EV Connect
You don't
should be able to
suppose the village is
give you
gonna
that
have
data.
that.
You should have a dashboard, somebody's got to log in somewhere, and you should be able to see that.
able to track how many.
Yeah, and I get that, look, the supply demand right now, if we were gonna do this and we could do it for not a lot of money because of all the rebates and whatever, you're doing it for the future. It's not for the demand that's there now.
Well, and some of it's for the future next year. I mean,
And that's,
you know.
yes, right, yeah. And, well, and we've seen, Paul's not here tonight, but NYSERDA, and I'm very familiar, they're 90% of the electric lines coming from RG&E. NYSERDA, you said that these are 7,000 a unit, and NYSERDA's doing 4,000 a unit?
NYSERDA's doing 8,000 for a dual port unit, And the cost of the station is, figure $7,000. So your surplus can be applied to your annual network charges.
That's
or
the
things like that.
8,000 that we just got.
That's what we just received, yes.
All right,
All right.
Ron, thanks.
I appreciate it.
One last question.
Yeah.
Is there any limit to how many NYSERDA will reimburse per municipality?
It's $80,000 per year per customer.
Per year, okay.
So that's
And they're-
10 dual port stations per year.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
two cars can pull up to one of these stations?
Mm-hmm.
2 trains. Okay. Wow, thanks, Ron.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah,
and
no,